Welcome to On Cooldown, the WoW news show where we boycott store mounts. I'm Flame and today we'll be ranting together. The biggest thing to happen this week are class hotfixes. A lot of changes that you want to know about your spec. There's a new store mount because China is the biggest market out there. And lastly, let's talk a bit about the raid and what it means for both factions. Oh, and war mode. If you are part of our little community, you might know that I released a guide on Elemental Shaman, and although I believe the guide is still good in covering the basics, rotations and such, it doesn't cover the new buffs and nerfs that Elemental received. We do plan on releasing more basic PvE guides on our channel, so if you are not interested in Shadow Priest, which we already covered, subscribe and follow us on social media so you can stay up to date with every video we upload. But back to our news segment. This week of January, a big load of hotfixes have been released. By big, I mean there are a few tunings that impacted classes stronger than normal. We see a lot of buffs to underperforming classes, and it seems that some of these buffs are meant for PvE primarily. Besides the usual changes to spells and abilities, we are actually looking at multiple Azerite traits that have been addressed. In line with the insane changes, we have Equipoise that received a damage buff by 200%. At the same time, other mage traits have been nerfed. One of the two classes that have had the most changes are the Hunter and the Shaman. The idea behind this, as stated by the developers, is to more accurately align traits and make them more attractive and desirable, especially the new ones we got in 8.1. Although, typically from Blizzard, the changes make the new traits severely outshine the former, at least in the case of Elemental Shaman and Arcane Mage. Although I'm not opposed to switching traits around for the sake of variety, it is a little scary that overnight our entire spec can change. But at least something is happening. My only other concern is the imminent nerf to the traits that have been buffed. Because let's be serious, the way these traits are simming right now is not something that's going to last. So, ladies and gents, buckle up and start saving Azerite since you never know when your trait will become complete dog shit. On the flip side, my Elemental Shaman gets a new talent set and rotation. Yay! Also, for those of you interested, I will post a video soon about the new build and what it implies, so stay tuned. Another note I want to make is about the Hunter, specifically the Marksman. Although it has seen some use at lower ratings, Marksmanship Hunter was underperforming in PvP and also PvE to no one's surprise. Well, this week it got a 3% damage boost across the board. This might not be enough to propel it to the top, but couple this with the Azerite changes, it might see more play in PvE. As for PvP, besides the 3% boost, Aim Shot, Arcane Shot and Steady Shot have been buffed by 10% strictly for PvP. Again, this is a numbers change. Marksmanship still has a lot to accomplish to compete with Survival, which has a toolkit that would put Batman's belts to shame. Other classes are seeing some love as well, such as the Warlock, especially in PvP. Although Destro has seen more and more play in the last few months, the recent changes to Chaos Bolt's damage might shine a bigger spotlight on them and take some heat off my Elemental Shaman. Please. I will link in the description a list of all the changes so you can check your own favorite. A new store mount has been released, and I know what you guys are thinking. Oh, we're about to see another YouTuber trash Blizzard on their mount. Well, and no, I'm not condoning this behavior. I personally don't like the fact that I pay for the game, pay for the subscription, yet there are things I cannot get without either farming an absurd amount of gold in game or forking out dollarinos. So without raging for what would be the third time in this expansion about another store mount that came out less than 6 months after its release, I will just say this. I'm not telling you to buy or not to buy. You are a grown up, hopefully. If not, here's what you should be watching, and not my f***ing news bulletin, because I will say whatever the f*** I want. It's my show, get the fuck out. Where was I? Oh right, store mount. I think it's a shit mount. Together with the Fox we had just a few weeks back, do not, under any circumstances, represent what Warcraft is. They are shit mounts, they belong in the trash. As for their monetization model, I will not buy it because I don't want Blizzard to know that I appreciate their effort. It's only half the price of the expansion anyway. Moving on, and thank God. The raid has been out for 2 weeks at this point. We are already seeing the top guilds aiming for Mythic Jaina, and although my guild is still progressing through Heroic, I have to say that this is probably one of the coolest raids ever, and Jaina is the coolest encounter so far. If you are not a raider, I would still highly recommend giving this one a try. I would recommend not LFR, but if there is any way for you to run it with your guild or pug it, you will enjoy it. But that aside, what does this raid mean for us, the players? Regardless of what faction you play, there are a few interesting things that happened. Spoiler warning, I will go over some things that happen in the raid, so if you don't want to know, well, you have been warned. The Alliance essentially raids the Zara lore in the attempt of sabotaging the Zandalari fleet and putting a wrench in between Zandalar and the Horde to prevent their union. One thing interesting that happened this week is the dialogue between Greymane and Rastakhan. Now, I'm not sure if it's new or not, maybe you guys can let me know in the comments, but I don't remember this dialogue happening last week. Wowhead already has an article on this, but I will voice my own opinion as well. My first impression of the dialogue was that the Alliance are a bunch of douches. This is really awesome to feel as a Horde, especially after we were douchey when we burned down the tree. With this in mind, it is hard and irrational to hold a grudge, but it's nice to know that Alliance is not just some pure good faction. Or is it? The fact is, all of this side of the raid, the turning into Alliance characters with crappy mogs and racials part, is being narrated to us by a Zandalari NPC. If you really think about it, there is no way that NPC can be subjective about her own king being killed. And as such, the dialogue is a little different on the Alliance side, where Greymane doesn't come out as a D-bag. Clearly this doesn't change much since the differences between the two are not substantial enough, but it's a really nice touch on the writing and storytelling. Playing through the Zuldazar storyline, I came to really like Rastakhan. He was a flawed character, blinded by his people's success across the millennia, and as such, saw most of our concerns as trivial. I'm not sure how obvious it was to you guys, but it was pretty so to me when I did the story with Talanji and Nazmir, that one day she will clearly step up to the throne. She seemed down to earth and open-minded enough to realize the threat her people were facing. So is the Horde weakened by the attack? Now, with Talanji as the Zandalari leader? Who knows? I guess we will see in the next patch, but for now it's clear that Zandalari are more inclined to join the Horde than before. And we cannot talk about conflict without mentioning the war mode changes. Nothing big, most of it was mentioned in the Q&A we had some time ago. If you have been playing Alliance, which is and was the least represented faction with war mode activated, you would know that you have been enjoying a nice and juicy 30% war mode bonus, plus a quest that rewarded you handsomely. The quest reward will be dialed down a bit in terms of eye level to what I understand to be 385 eye level. Correct me if I'm wrong, please. And the bonus itself will be gradual, from a 15% war mode bonus scaling by 5% increments depending on how much the sides are unbalanced. So if you are seeing a different number than 10 or 30%, this is why. If you want to know more things that happen in WoW, delivered to you in an easy to digest format, make sure to follow us on all things. Like and subscribe to our channel as well, and let us know. Has your spec received some changes lately? Hit us in the comments, and I will see you next time.